Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I think I've solved a problem. The problem of not having anything to film. Well, there's 160 odd orchids in here, how can I not have anything to film? It's trying to work out a way of engaging my viewers. Now, while we're on the subject of viewers, I've got three main types. I've got those that are picky. They pick and choose what they want to view, and they don't view very often. I've got those that pick and choose what they want to view, but actually view quite often and watch a fair old few of the videos. And then I've got those, which I'm very lucky to have, who watch it virtually everything I post. Thank you for that. So this should please everybody in one way or another, which is quite important for the channel, obviously. So you've seen, those who have followed the channel for some time, I do a series now and again, a set of videos that go together. They're usually stuck in a playlist as well, so they remain collectively together for all time basically, unless I delete the playlist, which I've never deleted a playlist. So what's the idea then? Well, first of all, when I've told you the idea, it would be nice if you left a comment saying whether you think it's a good idea, and you might want to indicate which one of those three types of viewers you are, unless you can think of a fourth or fifth type. That'll be fun. Right, so what we're going to do, it's a form of an update, but it follows on from the idea I had of doing one shelf at a time, which was just basically getting the orchids off of a shelf, and that mixed them up a bit in some cases, in most cases, because my orchids are spread around, they're not necessarily collectively together by type. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick on dendrobiums. We're going to pick on orchids by genus mainly, but where we've got large genus, I will subdivide them. So if you take the dendrobiums, for instance, I've got far too many to put those in a video. So I will split them up by type, so we can have a look at the black hair type, the Latoria types, the Phalaenopsis types, the winter resters, the nobiles, and odds, ones that don't really fit into any of those categories. Well, there's 5 or 6 videos for a start. And some of the videos might only have one, but I'm not just going to look at the orchids. We're going to have a chat about how you might look after them and expand it into a sort of care guide as well as a look at. So it's like an update with care. And that's the theory. That's what I'm hoping to do. And that should give me a lot of videos over quite a long period of time. They won't be consecutive, one after the other, with nothing else in between. We'll still have our regular things, Sunday chats, everything in bloom on the 8th, plus the odd new bloom just opened. Those will be interspersed with this very large set in the form of an update. So that's the idea. You can leave a comment to say whether you think it's a good idea. This is just to get us through the doldrums, this period when there's just not much going on. Well, we can still have a look at the orchids as they are now, discuss my plans for them, discuss what I expect of them as we come into the growing season again, even though that might seem a way off yet. Well, it is. But yeah, we can do all that and include all that in the videos. And I'm hoping there'll be something for everybody. I mean, I'm in a position where with this grow room I can grow quite a variety. But there's also a fair few types of orchids that I used to grow that I now can't grow. It's just too cold here. I mean, some of the orchids that I miss my Tolumnias. I had a big collection of Tolumnias and I really like them. It's just too cold here. They come from the Caribbean. They don't like these temperatures and they won't survive. They will either struggle really badly and never do well, or they will just keel over. So again, there's some things I just can't grow. Now, when we do this by genus, things like my Paphiopedilums, which I'm going to do now on the end of this, there's few enough to do in a single video. My Coelogenes, single video. Dendrobiums, no, they'll be split up by type. Oncidium alliance, no, they'll have to be split up by type. Miltonias, Miltoniopsis, Odontoglossum types, intergenerics, an actual proper Oncidium. So there's 5 there, just in that set. And then in the cooler set you've got the Masdevallias, the Restrepias. Yeah, we've always got the Cymbidiums to fall back on, but we've done those a couple of times recently, so they'll get left till last, unless something happens to spark us over there, shall we say. So that's the idea. I hope you like the idea. So I shall break off now, rearrange the plants and the camera and everything like that, and we'll get on with the first in this set, which is a look at my Paphiopedilums. Okay, here we go then, Paphiopedilums. I have 6. Since I restarted growing these after a very long break, the ones I've got don't seem to be doing bad as a general rule. Not all doing as well as each other, they're not all doing as well as the best of them, but they're all still here, and that's the difference, because when I used to grow these they kept keeling over. They'd last a while and then they'd just die off. Whereas now they at least are hanging in there. Now, the idea is by putting them on the turntable, I've got 2 hands free and we can look at the whole plant. Now this is probably the most recent one, and it's villosum variety Ambuinense. And let's get the tag out because it's in the way. You going to come out? Oh, it's got a root stuck to it. Right, there we go. Now, have we got roots on this one? I'm not sure we've got. Oh yeah, this has got a pot full of roots. There's not a lot of root activity, but we do have a pot full of roots, so it's capable of hydrating itself and feeding itself, so that's good. As far as the plant is concerned, the older part of the plant is round here. So you've got a fan here and a fan here, both of which have bloomed. So obviously when I got this, it was a division, yeah, not grown from seed. And then what's happening now is we have a nice strong new growth here, which should bloom in the not too distant future. There's no sign of it yet. And another new growth pushing up in front of it. So we've now got 2 new growths in progress on this one. I'm more than happy with that sort of thing going on. As I said, these never used to grow very well for me, and at least they seem to be progressing. Right, we'll stop on this one and have a chat about care. Paphiopedilums in the main, and we can't generalise too much, but we will have to, because really you need to look up the care for each one, because they vary considerably. You've got 2 basic types. You've got those with the patterned leaves, which are said to be warmer growers than the plain leaved ones like this one. That's not always the case. That's why I said it's difficult to generalise with these, because as fast as you say something you have to take it back and contradict it, sort of thing. There are some warm growing plain leaved ones, but in the main most of the patterned leaves ones prefer to be a bit warmer. Now none of these like to be too cold. The ones I've got, I'm not temperature dependent on any of them. I haven't even bothered looking up their temperature ranges. They have to put up with what I've got. But if you have a place that's a bit warmer than another place, then obviously I would suggest you do separate them out if you can and put the warmer ones in the warmer place, the warmer growing ones. The big problem with the Paphiopedilums, as far as I'm concerned, is the habitat they come from. Now many grow on rocks. There are some true terrestrials, although they don't tend to grow right in the ground, they tend to grow in leaf litter. And there are some that grow on rocky outcrops, cliffs and things like that, river valleys, and there are some genuine epiphytes that grow in trees. So first of all, you've got that to bear in mind. The next thing, and probably the most important thing, is the alkalinity or acidity of that environment that they come from. Now, if yours is an epiphyte, you can get rid of that worry. You can just grow it like all your other epiphytes. However, if it's one that comes from rocky outcrops and cliffs, coastal areas, you need to bear in mind what sort of environment that would be. And a lot of those rocky outcrops are limestone based. That's going to be alkaline. And that sort of Paphiopedilum is not going to like an acidic mix. It's going to object to it. The roots will probably fail, but it's not going to be happy. So there's your differentiation, is, you know, is this one that grows in, like most other orchids, you know, somewhere between 6 to 6.5 as far as a pH scale is concerned, maybe a bit higher. But then you've got those that come from the more alkaline places, prefer to be up near 7. Well, your normal mix that you use for possibly the rest of your orchids, your sphagnum, your bark, all that sort of stuff, if you're using organic, that's going to be more acidic than those are going to like. So somehow or other, you've got to raise the pH up towards 7. And most people do it with additional limestone or something like that. But there are ways of doing it. Look it up if you think you need that sort of thing. As far as light goes, you'll read in the ancient scrolls and runes that these are shade lovers. Well, they're not all shade lovers. Some of them come from quite exposed areas on cliffs, on little islands and places like that. And often they're growing in full sun. So don't take it as read that they are all shade lovers. And in the UK, I would suggest that any book or anything that says something is a shade lover, I would take it with a pinch of salt, because our light levels are so low. You've got 4 months of the year where the days are so short that, you know, they don't grow very well during those periods because the days aren't long enough. And in amongst those days, there's a lot of drizzly, rainy weather in the UK. Well, that's low light level. So, you know, you could put them on your brightest shelf in weather like that and they're probably still not getting enough light. So go careful with the light levels. I wouldn't let any of them get too cold. I mean, I go down to sort of 12, 13 is my lowest temperature. They could do with being a bit higher than that. They'd be happier at 15 or 16. But I can't do it, and so far they're not objecting. Right, so that's the first one. Get that one out of the way. That was a generalised care guide. I'm not doing individual care guides for these. You have to find out which one you've got. Now this one's got virtually no roots. I could safely say it's possibly got one. So it's almost a rootless individual. It was a single fan division when I got it, which is not ideal because, you know, especially if it's in bloom, that single fan division has no backup. And it's put all its energy into a bloom, and that bloom may last quite a long time, so it ends up relatively weak. But I do have a nice new growth coming on this one, and what looks like the possibility of a second growth, although that looks very strange, doesn't look like a normal start to a growth. And I'm hoping that this growth here will eventually produce some roots, because this is almost rootless. There's hardly anything there at all. And I'll do pop-ups with pictures of blooms if I've got them. This is the one that hasn't got a tag because its name is too long to fit on a tag, as you can see. But we've got a new growth. It's pushing on. I wouldn't say it's doing brilliantly, but it's pushing on. Right, this one is not doing well at all. The centre of the plant has failed. I'm not sure this one in the long term will make it. Again, it's got virtually no roots, Well, what it is doing is growing quite a few new growths. We've got one here, we've got one here, got one here, and a couple over here. This fan here looks like it's got another new growth coming out from the base. So it's growing new growths, but what it's not being is happy. Sorry, there's an old leaf there, I'm just taking it off while I've got it in my hand. So this one's not doing well. This is Helvetia. I've got a feeling that might be a primary cross, but I'm not sure, don't quote me on it. So, not doing well. Virtually no roots. I think there's one reasonable root on that whole plant. And hopefully with that number of new growths I should get some roots. If I can grow some roots, I'll have a happy plant, or a happier plant. Suffers with very pale leaves, this one, but the new growths that are coming out seem to be a bit greener. So that's that one. And this is a very special Paphiopedilum. Right, next we've got a little miniature. And this is Appletonianum even. This has got some roots, not many, but it's got some. It has bloomed. Again, it was a relatively small division. Oldest fan here, followed by the fan that it had when I got it with the bud, which did bloom, very nice as well. And now we have a new growth. And with that new growth, I'm hoping we will get some better roots. It's producing a third leaf as we speak. So, okay, lovely patterning on the leaves here. Gorgeous pattern, yeah? And some people are quite happy to have a collection of Paphiopedilums for their leaves, irrespective of whether they manage to get them to bloom, because they are such attractive plants. I'd agree, in that case anyway. Not necessarily all cases. Right, more coffee before it gets too cold. Right, so then we've got this one. This is a rather large one. This is a primary cross. It's leeanum, and it currently has a bud that will be open very soon, and another one round here pushing on. I don't think there's a third anywhere yet, although that looks like it. Yeah, there's a third bud there coming out of that growth. It's got other new growths that are pushing on, like here. There's a new growth here. There's another one here. So there are other new growths pushing on that haven't got spikes yet. This one has a pot full of roots. This is a happy plant. Yeah, it's got nice leaves. There's a few not so clever, but they are on the oldest part of the plant. Same here, very old pseudobulb. In fact, that's probably the oldest, not pseudobulb, fan on the plant, and 2 or 3 leaves coming off of that one going in various directions. So, but that's a happy plant. That one's okay. Now that's a plain leafed one. As such, would probably be a bit happier or able to put up with cooler temperatures, which it seems to show that it's not objecting to the cooler temperatures. Got good root growth in there. Plenty of new growths on there, and 3 buds coming on at the moment, one that will be open relatively soon. Well, that's sticking off the top of the camera. There we go. One that will be open relatively soon. It's talking about a bud that you can't even see. Duh. I've put the camera so that it's rather close, so that hopefully you can see most of what's going on here. That was the idea anyway. It might not have been perfect for every plant, but it's doing okay. Now this is blackjack. This is what started the craze, quite honestly. I went to Burnham's and I refused to come away from a Burnham's visit without some plants, or at least one. I just think it would be rude not to. You know, I like to support the nursery. And it's the last big nursery in the country that has the variety of plants that they have, even though a lot are bought in to sell, but it's still a proper nursery, so I like to support them. And I chose this because I really like the blooms. I like the dark colour. Now this one's just lost its latest bloom. Again, nice patterned leaves, not so strongly marked as the previous one with patterns, but nonetheless nice patterning on the leaves. You could call that mottling, I suppose, rather than an accentuated pattern. Now this one's got quite a few new growths coming. There's a nice new growth here pushing on, that's a nice strong one. We've got this one here, nice strong new growth there. I was going to say there's a pair here, but this one's just bloomed, but it's got another new growth in front of it. So we got 3 and this one 4. So we got 4 new growths pushing on. We have a pot full of roots, happy plant, and hopefully those new growths, well, they are highly likely to bloom as time goes on. They may not bloom together, but as time goes on they should bloom okay. So that's my 6 Paphiopedilums, and they seem to, in the main, doing a lot better than they did round the other place when I stopped getting any more because they just kept failing. These are not failing, although one of them really doesn't look too clever. And I also have a couple with virtually no roots. Talking to a specialist, apparently when you first get plants in, that is not that uncommon because people divide up large plants to sell to make money, and the divisions are often a little bit too small, and they may come from part of the plant that hasn't rooted. The main plant that they come off of has plenty of roots. You know, they're often specimen sized plants, but once they split them up, some of the pieces might not have a decent root system. And you've just got to be very patient, because as long as the plant is not failing, then eventually new roots will come from the new growths, and then you look after them. They're precious. When you repot Paphiopedilums, you take great care of the roots you've got, because some of them are incredibly slow to replace damaged or lost roots. Talking of lost roots, when they're not growing, when they're not actively producing growth, they don't need much water and hardly any feed, like most orchids. But these have the downside of being slow growers at the best of times. So if you keep your media too wet, especially if your temperatures are a bit low, then the roots you've got will probably rot. And as I've already said, they can be difficult at best to replace. So do not pour too much water in your pots. I've got active growth on some of these, so I like to keep those a little bit moister than some of the others I've got, especially those that have got virtually no roots. If they haven't got roots, what are they going to do with the water you pour in? Yeah? It's just going to keep that media wet, and then it will start becoming acidic. And if it's one of those that objects to acidity, you probably take the few roots you've got down, and any new ones are not going to like that media, so they'll probably stall and lose their growing tip. So you've got to take a bit of care with these and think. That's really the important thing. Think about what you're up to, do a bit of work on the internet, have a look, see where your plant comes from. If it says limestone outcrops, then it's not going to want an acidic media, it's going to want a more alkaline media, and accommodate that and you'll have a happier plant. Yeah. If it's a terrestrial, grows a lot of them grow on the forest floor in the leaf litter and stuff. Well, there's not many forest floors with lots of leaf litter that are alkaline. So those like a more acidic media, more normal I would call it. Yeah. And then obviously the epiphytes do tend to grow on trees like most other of the tropical orchids we talk about. So just treat them like you would any other, really. So there we go. That's a look at Paphiopedilums, and the first in a very large set of orchid videos that will get me through an amount of the winter, which is the idea. Rather than post nothing, I'll have something that should be of interest to some people each time I post one of these videos. I'm not going to interest everybody in every video, I accept that. But I'm doing what I can to keep ticking over during these doldrum type months when there's not much happening. So there we go. Thanks for dropping by and everything. Thanks for supporting the channel in whatever way you do. Before you go, don't forget the thumbs up, please. It costs you nothing, does no harm, and certainly does the channel some good. So it's the one thing you can do before you leave that will help the channel. If you're still here, you've already done a lot by watching the whole video, so thanks for that as well. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.